And I'd argue if you look at Erik's hair, I mean, he's got great hair. And the fact is, I mean, yours is pretty good, but look at his hair. You want good hair, right? So, I mean, you don't want to pull your hair out, worried about your facilities.
Hello, and welcome to Build Me Up with Laurisa and Kaitlin from Kraus-Anderson. Today, we're joined by three facility experts: Erik Krause, Director of Regional Facilities Hospital Operations at Allina Health; Tim Kittila, KA's in-house expert on facility planning and analysis; and Mike Stark, Director of Strategy and Growth at KA.
As the title suggests, today we'll be focusing on how proactive facility planning and management can save building owners time and money in the long run. The questions and topics discussed today are pulled from real-world experience, feedback, and questions we're receiving from our clients on a daily basis.
Erik, Tim, and Mike, welcome to Build Me Up. Do you want to just start us off by introducing yourself and let us get to know your voices?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Erik Krause. I'm the Director of Facilities for Regional Hospital Operations for Allina Health. I oversee about 7 of Allina's campuses and all hospitals ranging from small critical access hospitals to major metropolitan hospitals. Thanks for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm Tim Kittila. I'm the Director of Facility Consulting Services here at Kraus-Anderson. I oversee all the facility condition assessments that go on, all the various consulting type of engagements, as well as we look at, different types of facilities all across every market sector.
And I'm Mike Stark with Kraus-Anderson. I'm our Director of Strategy and Growth. And I work with all of our offices across the country. And I've had a soft spot for healthcare for the last 10 years, being a recovering project manager, working in a lot of healthcare facilities, and now helping facilities with their assessments.
Okay, for listeners who don't know what FCA is, can we get a high level? What is it? I know it's a lot.
Yeah, so FCAs stands for Facility Condition Assessment. It's a way that we look at a facility to determine what is deferred maintenance, what is upcoming facility expenditures, and analyze it to really preserve the asset or preserve the facility. We leverage IFMA, International Facility Managers Association type of way of looking at facilities in that facility condition assessment arena. So really just determining what the status of the building is and where we need to be looking for planning and capital planning.
Erik, you just did an FCA with Kraus-Anderson. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about leading up to that experience? What inspired you?
Oh, absolutely. And to be, expand on that a little bit, I've actually done 5 facility condition assessments with Kraus-Anderson, and they have all met my needs, from start to finish. And we are actually looking at kind of taking our initial facility condition assessments and giving them the 1-year review here in a few months. And so that I'm super excited on that. We can talk about that in a little bit later. But, within Allina Health, we are, a Minnesota-based healthcare organization that has 12 hospitals in total. One of those is in Wisconsin, Small Critical Access Hospital, mostly based here in Minnesota, though. What really drove the need to do the facility condition assessment is, we have extremely old buildings. Some buildings are over 100 years old. Some buildings are, only 20 years old, but they still have issues with them that we have to identify. And that way we can use good defendable data to decide how we're going to invest our limited capital. And if we don't have the data and the experts chiming in on the condition of all of the systems, it can really lead to, maybe some, untimely replacements or untimely repairs where those limited funds could be used somewhere that are much more necessary.
What got you to the point where you're like, we need a facility assessment?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. So, when I first started with Allina about 9 years ago, we had just recently prior to my start conducted a facility condition assessment with another firm, and there was a lot of discrepancies in the pricing. We used that to the best of our ability for a few years. And then, post-COVID, approximately 2021, 2022, we were asked to do internal facility condition assessments with our facility leaders and pulling in a few partners. And it really was, so high level, and we weren't subject matter experts. We really, were missing the mark on what was going on in our facilities. And so we quickly realized that we needed some additional support from subject matter experts, or SMEs as we call them, to help us identify what is the greatest need of the campus. We were taking a lot of our capital and prioritizing projects that just weren't the highest priority for the system. And so we had a scoring matrix that would, if there was a project or a need, we would take that through, a simple scoring matrix that determined a 0 to 5 scale. That there was a lot of individual, how do I want to say it, like their own personal feelings on the particular project. And it wasn't necessarily what was best for the system, but it was what they felt was the best for their campus. And so we're taking those projects and those requests and trying to compare them across all the campuses, because we'd have one campus that really prioritized, a particular replacement or a particular repair that on a number of other campuses was very low on the priority list. And so we needed a better way to have an even playing field across all of our sites, so we could prioritize those funds. Within that dilemma, it was a number of items that we just had far exceeded our capital that was available at the time, and so we have to find a way to responsibly prioritize what projects serve the greatest need.
When we started talking to Erik about the FCAs, and it's interesting because the dilemma that he just described too is not necessarily unique to Allina. Like other healthcare systems are facing those same challenges. And I think about Tim, what's outside of healthcare. I mean, what are you seeing other groups facing that same dilemma? I mean, what is it different, same?
Well, and it's really kind of the disparity of information that Erik was dealing with, let alone it was coming from different biased sources as well. So there's like it's like you need to have a standard. You need to have a set of parameters that we all agree on, that in order to really rank your priorities for your buildings, but also what building is the priority, because you got to start from the top down of like all these buildings. And so when you're asking me about are other people dealing with, this is every market sector. And in fact, when I came on board here at Kraus-Anderson, we largely did the K-12 marketplace. We saw a need for us to do this across every one of our market sectors that we serve in regards to doing facility condition assessments, because there's a real need there in order to prioritize, but then level set and set a standard for how we're looking at buildings. What is a deferred maintenance item? What is not? What really meets that threshold and that criteria to really prioritize the dollars that Erik's trying to find out, how he should spend his money in these. And so when we see places with multiple facilities, there's a real need to have this level set of a standardized facility condition assessment.
Yeah, when I would work with my facility managers, and they were, very passionate about needing to fix something on their campus, and they weren't wrong. I agree that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed.
Right.
But once we started having, multiple campuses go through this condition assessment process, we could share that information with the other facility managers across the different campuses, and say, hey, I really understand that you want to replace this, but it does to me seem like it has a few more years in it, and here's where we need to spend our money. I mean, here's what's going on in another campus. And it's not just the facility manager on that campus saying, I need more money because I need to do this. It gives the facility managers more transparency around what is going on at other campuses, and so they can say, oh yeah, okay, I understand you need that project replaced ahead of my want versus a need. And so it really helped them buy into it as well.
Do you think the way that you interact, we talk about interacting with the facilities team, but do you think it's changed the way you interact with your leadership team and how you plan or talk about those things that are going to affect them in the facility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is, once we're armed with this data of what's going on in our campuses, it makes much more clear picture to them, and then they can really see what we're faced with and really what is the long-term plan for the campus. So it's changed the way we are prioritizing our projects, what we are doing in years to come. So one thing that has been very beneficial of this, and it is true for a lot of different FCAs, is that if we know we have a piece of equipment or a section of building that needs to be addressed, and we have a project that's coming up in the near future, we can incorporate what that need is on that campus, even if it's maybe a year or two ahead of its recommended replacement, and tying it back to a project. So then that way we are already in the area. We can replace the equipment for much more cost effectiveness than it would be if we were going to do a standalone project and not remodel an area and then 2 years later say, oh, we need to go back in there, now we need to replace this. And so it helps us plan for the future, be as efficient as possible when we have even a small remodel project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, exactly. So there was an example of that, Mike, when we were working on an interventional radiology suite. We knew that we had an issue with our HVAC that served that area, and we needed to address it. And if we didn't have the information ahead of that project that we knew we had to address this HVAC, we would have had to put that project completely on hold or cancel it altogether, because we wouldn't have had enough HVAC air to be able to provide that space. Or we would have been in the middle of the project and all of a sudden found this very serious deficiency that would have really caused some pause with our executives to say, all of a sudden, how did we not know this? Well, luckily we did, and we were able to use that information to increase the budget and make a sound plan for that project to continue to move forward. Yep.
So when people say we can't afford what we've built, what do you tell them?
Bottom line, let's get the data. Let's get the facts, because frankly, where there's a will, there's a way. It is rare when we say we have to bulldoze and demo a building, which is good news. There is a pathway. In fact, I've been asked by clients that, hey, Tim, do this FCA, but can you make sure it shows that it goes in the divest category? And I'm like, I can't promise that. Let me just do my due diligence. And then I come back and I'm like, hey, well, here's how you can fix this building, And the thing is the dollars of an existing facility, they can be wisely spent in a way to really maintain that facility. But the bottom line is just get the facts. Like, let's not go to any foregone conclusions. Where there's a will, there's a way. There's all sorts of tricks up our sleeve, because all of these line items of deferred maintenance items that we've collected for Erik in the Allina system and building out all these things, they're not there to say, this is the way you have to do it, Erik. It's a way that Erik, it elicits a conversation, and then we can adjust scope and schedule and budget and accordingly based upon how we want to work it. So all of these line items are elicit a conversation scope, but it's a reminder that, hey, this item will need some sort of maintenance or maintaining. And there's a recommended path, there's a best practices, and then there's business practical as well. So we're supposed to go down there. So I say just get the facts. And let's work through the process, and let's identify what your needs are and come up with a plan. Inevitably, when we do this, and it's the same thing for Erik or any of our clients, all of these things land in the first year, because these buildings are like 25, 35 years old. And so inevitably, all the deferred maintenance and upcoming facility expenditures land in that first year. And it's like, oh, okay, Erik, you have $170 million, right? You just go and fix all this stuff. And then the answer is no, nobody has that cash laying around. So then we get into what's called the rebalance process. And Erik kind of referenced this before, is we're going to do what's called refreshes and renewals now for our clients. But before we even get into that, we help them rebalance. And so Erik goes, can you get me between, $10 and $20 million? I'm using fake numbers right now, but $10 and $20 million a year, and so we can start rebalancing that plan and figuring out what our priorities What are things that are going to impact operations that are highly critical to the operation of that hospital? And what are things that are nice to have, like the low criticality, paint carpet walls, aesthetics type things that can be pushed around the plan?
But I'll say, Tim, I think what I'm hearing too is, Erik in the healthcare world, and this is not, other sectors are like this too, but you live in a dynamic industry where things are constantly changing for you. You can't be static. And, that's what I'm hearing when you're talking, Tim, about, what Erik's facing or what he's trying to do with this, with his FCA is he needs a dynamic tool. He needs something that can flex, change, move to allow him to analyze things in different ways, because the problem that you're facing today might be different tomorrow and the day after that. And so having the ability to, look at things through different lenses, that's where the power is. It's not a static report that you get, collects dust, it's on a shelf, and you dust off once a year. You need somebody that lives with you every single day.
Right. And especially as our health system strategy changes, based on outside influences. I mean, we could have, something that, redirects our focus to surgery centers, for example. And so that may, that market may be something that the community needs more of. And so we need to shift what funds we have available to fill that need for the community. But that may be that could have been completely blind to us 5 years ago, but we need that opportunity to have the information to flex into that, and it needs to be, as you say, very dynamic or very flexible. So.
And one of the failures in the marketplace, and shame on us, engineers, architects, construction managers, consultants, we make this pretty report and everything like that, lots of pictures in there and everything, and then we hit print on it and you go, here you go, Erik, here's your facility assessment. As soon as you hit print on that report, it's immediately old. Immediately old, because I guarantee you, I'll say, Erik, you need to change rooftop unit 2. And then next thing you know, rooftop unit 4 goes out. And so the plan that I said rooftop unit 2 needs to be, he's robbing from Peter to pay for Paul in order to replace that rooftop unit. Yeah. And I'm just like, so the plan's immediately old. So we this should be your vision if you're doing a facility condition assessment, is that whoever's doing that for you, make sure they deliver it to you on a way that you can modify and move and manipulate this plan, because plans change, things happen, things break, and Erik needs to be able to have something that he can go in there and say, okay, we need to pull dollars from here to there. How do we get there?
Yeah. And I do appreciate you not including facility managers in that analogy that you were just giving. I think that, we are very much, closed-minded at times too, because we want to, but I can't echo that enough with, if we have a 3-ring binder on the shelf and, how quickly outdated that becomes. And, it's, every year we have something that needs to be replaced, and it's rarely according to plan. We can go in any day, any week, any month, and we have a plan of what we're going to do. And then within healthcare, it just gets changed on the moment's notice. And that may not be, new to other industries, but I know in healthcare, and I can speak very closely to that our plans are constantly changing and constantly evolving. And so
I do have one example, though. This is kind of fun, but
another analogy.
I have this is an example. Okay. This is actual real life. This is real life. So. But no, what I like, it was funny. I presented at a board meeting and said, hey, by the way, your chiller's on its last legs, and just a heads up, and that you're going to have to plan for that replacement very soon here. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from the facility manager. It's like, yep, that chiller went up and everything like that. So that's one time I was like accurate on predicting. Yeah, that was it out of like 24-year history of doing assessments. So I was proud about that time. But it's rare. It's hard because this mechanical equipment. We saw 1950 refrigeration gear that's still operational at some of the Allina. That's phenomenal engineering, and I'm like, but I wouldn't hinge my hopes to that. It's well beyond its useful life, right. And so, so we've got metrics and we got things to say, time to replace and time to prepare for that, and you got real data on when things fail, but at the end of the day, this thing's got to be dynamic. Mm-hmm. Erik's got to have the ability to manipulate this data.
Right. We have to have visibility of what we're up against.
Right.
Especially with the changing staff market. We have a lot of folks that are very seasoned that are retiring, and we have to make sure and capture what they know about the buildings, because facility managers are great. They take care of the facility staff. They take care of all of the equipment, keep things from 1958, I think it was, continuing to be operational. But they can lose a lot of that historical knowledge of the building as soon as those individuals decide to retire. And so, another benefit of these FCAs is we can capture a lot of the, okay, this building has this little uniqueness about it, and that piece of equipment this is how it works, and we need to make sure that gets replaced. And so we're taking advantage of that historical knowledge with the staff, and then we can use that to benefit us for years to come.
So I just think back to like the COVID days where you would have to wait like months for MEP equipment.
Well, yeah, equipment still, switchgear still over a year out. There's some of that stuff has not changed.
Help with that. If you're like, hey, your rooftop unit is looking a little dicey, like, can you advise they order one now so they have it? Or how does that work?
Yeah, it is honestly, and I've walked into waste treatment plants and water treatment plants for large municipalities and looked at switchgear, knowing that switchgear is 2 years out.
Yeah, it's a long way.
And you're seeing tracing and gunk and everything all on the bus bars. This is a failure, an imminent failure waiting to happen. And you talk about the planning and the engineering that has to go into replacing switchgear. Erik can probably tell you horror stories of replacing switchgear. It's not fun, but that is exactly when we get done the assessment and we hand over the data, we say, so when are you calling the engineer right now to start the design process and start procurement of your switchgear? Because you need to start now. And that's the thing is you start putting this on the radar, and the consequence of that going down is frankly scary, because you're talking about running on generators for a very long time. You're talking about a major catastrophic failure. Those are the things that we don't pass go. We don't collect 200. We go straight to Erik or the facility manager. We literally say, here's your situation. Let's talk about this and let's be proactive. And thankfully, we haven't had to do that a lot on Erik's facilities. They're pretty well maintained and run. But whenever we see a safety issue at a school district, such as a door not latching, as simple as a door not latching, we all know the security parameters. That is an immediate. We go directly to the facility manager and the buildings and grounds directors and say, this door needs to be fixed now, today. Like, we cannot have people coming into these doors and switchgear. And so it's this immediate trigger to say, hey, Erik, what should we do with this? What is the game plan? Because something needs to be done.
Right. And when we have that long lead time equipment, we plan our projects accordingly. So if we are planning something 2 years out, then, and we know we need to procure the switchgear is in this analogy now, so we will start that process, and it just sets us up that much better for the future, because then we aren't reacting, we're being very proactive, as much as you can in healthcare, which isn't very often. But I'm it's funny that you bring up the whole the switchgear and the failure. Last week that happened on one of my campuses. We lost the utility transformer to the entire hospital, and so the hospital was on generator power for hours while it's not lucky for them, but luckily it was the city's transformer that impacted my hospital campus, so it wasn't one of ours.
So you gave us Tim's card.
So yeah, I did, and luckily they were able to get one very quickly within a matter of hours. But that hospital was on generator while we got that fixed, and some of those we don't have the visibility on because it's the city utility. But all of our internal equipment, we now can make plans for all of the equipment that is obsolete. I can't tell you how many different pieces of equipment that are in use today in our campuses that are no longer supported by the manufacturer. they can't get parts. I mean, in some cases, some facilities are having to buy stuff on eBay to be able to keep their campuses operational. So luckily we're not in that boat, but I've heard just horror stories of folks trying to get equipment off of eBay after something's failed. So we've identified them, and we're, through this process, and we're able to really, plan accordingly. Say, okay, that equipment, the condition is poor, it's obsolete. It's a very easy discussion with our finance folks to say, hey, I need this amount of money to be able to fix this, and here's why. And so, and the FCA really bolsters that request. It gives our finance folks, our administrative folks, just that extra bit of comfort that others have looked at this. It's not just one person's opinion. So it is very commonplace now for us to have to put together a full report as far as why we need to replace something. And by having this FCA, we can share year over year what we're projecting, and it's not catching people by blindsiding them as much. They have, there's still going to be those surprises. There's still going to be things we don't expect and are unknown, but for the most part, it's helping folks kind of prioritize and plan for what they're going to be faced with in the coming years.
Yeah, what we lean into is the IFMA, the International Facility Managers Association's metrics for measuring a building, which is called the Facility Condition Index. What the Facility Condition Index is comprised of is the top number is your deferred maintenance totals and upcoming facility expenditures. Your bottom number is your building replacement costs over some sort of a selected time domain. We pick 10 years, but some people want to look at it on a 5-year horizon. Some will put it at a 3-year horizon. We look at 10 years because that's when most people can react, and it gives a good measure of like where that building is headed from a standpoint of its condition. And so that's a way to level set and look at different types of buildings. So I can look at a healthcare facility, or I can look at a K-12 facility. I can look at a public works facility. I can look at a police station. You name it. You name the type of facility. If you tell me the FCI, I can tell you what the condition of that building is. And I'll feel good about it because it's an apples to apples, and it kind of level sets and standardizes. The closer that number is to zero, and that's the deferred maintenance totals divided by the building replacement cost. The closer that number is to zero, the better your building is. Meaning you have very little deferred maintenance totals and a very big building replacement costs, your building's in good shape. But then you start getting that number, that deferred maintenance total up, then you start moving up and creeping up. So it's really a 0 to 1 type engagement as we look at, an FCI, Facility Condition Index. So that's how we measure it. That gives him guidance on where to look at different buildings. But then we also look at, condition of items. We look at criticality of items. And so you can kind of sort the list from there. But this is FCI is the kind of the starting measurement of our facilities to really level set.
I think what's important on that measurement tool too is, part of that equation is the building replacement costs as well as the deferred maintenance. And where are you getting those costs from? Are they coming from RS means? Are they coming from, live data to understand where those construction costs are coming from? And I think that's a unique piece too, Tim, that you bring to the table where when we're helping evaluate or that formula that comes together, it's based off of real live construction data of active things that are happening in the market, so that it's not there's no concern that, hey, this data might not be accurate or might be antiquated, because that's important. That could skew your information if you're using the building replacement costs. We're Erik's in Minnesota, but if we're using the building replacement costs of a new hospital in Arizona, which would be different, that's going to skew what his FCI is going to look like too, which I think is an important piece to think about, that having that expertise of where you are localized can be very important too, so that your information, I was joking about him putting his thumb on the scale, but that could be a way that could affect the accuracy or the truth of what you're providing.
Can the costs also reflect real time, there's a lot of conversation around tariffs, supply chain. Does it reflect that as well?
So So our way is a way, not the way, but our way is a way, because Erik is a customer of Kraus-Anderson and living on our online portal. He gets the added benefits of being connected to an active database of cost information. So that gets looked at on a quarterly basis, and any effects of the market trades or market sectors or different things. We see aluminum go up and down, copper go up and down, and all these things affect different numbers. And our cost estimating team that's building construction projects, they're looking at this data on a quarterly basis, and we meet on a quarterly basis, and that gets affected. And so that'll affect the cost of the information.
He's looking at his pie chart or his bar graph, and it's like, Tim, this went up.
Yeah.
You can be like, well,
Here's why.
here's why.
And so having that capability connected, it is truly live. And that's something that we've enhanced as part of our services of FCAs. And then, but Erik always has the option of disconnecting himself from the KA portal and from that, and having it on his own. And so we don't want to ever feel like a client is tied down, and then they can always call us and say, hey, let's level set this again. Sure. But it's just handy that he's on the portal and able to do all this and have it at his fingertips. So that's all part of the engagement. So.
Yeah, and the other thing that you didn't mention that I think is very important is that we identify the soft costs within the pricing structure, and what is the cost associated with doing whatever the project is or replacing what the item is. It's built into that cost model. So if we have, in one of my campuses, our chillers are in the basement, and in order to get those replaced, we're going to have to cut open the ground outside the building, cut open the foundation wall, and then do special rigging to be able to get those very heavy pieces of equipment out and replaced. Well, if you're just looking at the cost of a chiller, you're going to be grossly off on the actual cost of getting that installed. And so, engaging with KA and their approach really helps identify that. And then as those other items ebb and flow, whether it's tariffs and or even inflation, we can really have that those things updated and as the market ebbs and flows. But we definitely have all of the costs identified. I wouldn't say we're 100% identified, but we're close enough that I feel confident in going forward with approval or requesting approval for the funds.
And that means and methods view of that. And it's funny, architects and engineers, they do FCAs and everything. And what I found out is that they're uncomfortable when it comes to this cost estimating piece, and that's where we do have an advantage, and we can help supplement their data, or at least or even just drive the FCA, and they can work on the master planning and the concepts and what they're good at. We all kind of have our own lane, but having this understanding of cost and means of methods of how a job gets done, like your chiller project, and cutting holes in roofs and everything like that, to have an all-inclusive part of that, captured as part of what is it going to take to really do this thing. And that comes from leveraging our construction expertise, leveraging our project management expertise, that know how to work within buildings and work on projects and what the total costs are.
Mm-hmm. Total.
Mm-hmm. Eliminating by the way,
That's an open moment.
Yeah.
Guess you leave the wall open.
Yeah.
It's an open air
hammer
chiller space.
We get some free cooling in Minnesota.
Free cooling, yeah.
Let's say that somebody is listening to this, a facility owner or facility manager, and they're listening and they're like, I don't even want to look at it. Like, I know it's bad. What would you say, Tim, to kind of put them at ease, or Erik, in your experience, actually looking at the thing? What is helpful about, taking a proactive look at the facility?
Well, if somebody is scared to look behind the curtain of what they have in front of them in their building, I would ask them, how many sleepless nights do they have? How many times have they been woken up because something's failed or unexpectedly not prepared for that? Is that worse? I feel that, it's better to know what our challenges are to the best of our ability than to be reacted to them or have them, just catch us off guard constantly. There's enough times that we have failures in our systems on things we can't control and we can't see because we don't have a crystal ball. I sure as heck would want to limit that as much as possible. And we live in a world where we need to have information to make sound decisions. And if folks are just really wanting to maybe they've been operating with blinders on, or just what's out of sight, out of mind is better. I think that'll eventually catch up with them. And I think it's so much better to at least know what you're faced with, because quite honestly, it would instill more confidence in our senior leaders, into our facilities departments, if we know what we're facing, rather than to say, nope, I had no idea that pump was going to fail, even though it's been grinding with no bearings for months on end, years on end, things like that.
I'll also say there's a cost impact to just putting your head in the sand and ignoring it. If you're proactive and replace that, it's like a 1-to-1 type ratio. If you wait for damage to occur to the facility, it's a 1-to-4 ratio, and then it just gets worse from that. And then if something else happens in this case, it's a 1-to-12 ratio as far as your cost metrics. So there's real statistics that have been measured by not being proactive on your facility maintenance versus just letting an issue happen. Let alone, I think, the component of the human component and the drain it does on people when you don't have your information in front of you. Mm-hmm. You're just constantly worrying about that. I mean, how many of you have gotten up in the middle of the night and just like, I just need to write down a list of all the things I got to get done tomorrow. And that's what it is. And it gives you a little bit of peace of mind that, okay, all right, yes, I got some big things coming, but there's a little bit of sanity that you get back by having this comprehensive review, comprehensive list in front of you that you can now just kind of come up with a plan and attack, your deferred maintenance, despite the fact that some of these facilities might be tipping over. And that's what you're trying to prevent, is stopping these buildings from tipping over. And you want to make sure that you can find a path to get it from, red to green on the FCI chart.
Right. I mean, and this is true for any industry, but whether it's healthcare, K through 12, they set their budgets. They if we don't identify the costs that we are projecting throughout the year, they're going to spend that money for something else. Yeah. And so if you're not proactively identifying some items that need to be replaced, and so they can be budgeted for, that is going to catch up with you very, very quickly, because if something breaks, there may not be money to fix it properly. And so you may be stuck with having to Band-Aid a piece of equipment that's just going to make it worse down the road, or have, some sort of God forbid, negative patient outcome because that piece of equipment just needed to be Band-Aid and nobody was prepared to replace that. Or to what we talked about before, it's going to take a long lead time to procure it. You may have the funds, but you may not be able to get it for a year and a half, but you didn't realize that. And so now you're on borrowed time yet again. So there's, I can't emphasize what you were saying enough with the costs associated with it, because there's financial costs and there is human costs to it as well that, very much interact with our patients and loved ones who are caring there. They could have some pretty serious negative outcomes if something fails.
Right. And I'd argue, if you look at Erik's hair, I mean, he's got great hair. And the fact is, yours is pretty good, but look at his hair. You want good hair, right? So, I mean, you don't want to pull your hair out, worried about your facilities, so.
My brother was just commenting, why don't I have his gray white hair? So, yeah, he's only a few years older than me, so yeah.
So you're saying if you want to keep your hair
do an FCA.
Yeah.
That's
Is
it.
that our new slogan?
I think so.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I will say doing an FCA can be overwhelming, and in looking at the data, afterwards can be very overwhelming.
I did not feel overwhelmed.
Good.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something, and that's not a plug just for
Yeah.
you personally, because the comment about my hair. But I'm telling you, I did not feel overwhelmed. I
stand by
felt that
that,
it
by the
was
way,
very much a a needed process. But I never felt overwhelmed. You laid it out very well.
Thank you. And what I'm saying is it's just a tremendous amount of data that we try to bring up and rise up so you can sift through it and can work through it. And then if it is like, oh my gosh, what do we do? That renewal process of coming back and revisiting it and kind of combing through the nits of everything that you're going through as far as like what you're dealing with. But what projects did you accomplish? What did you guys get, tackled? I did that roof. I did that rooftop unit. I did, we redid that patient wing and then revising that plan. And then I will say, and I get to do this in a few weeks, I get to speak to a school board who did an FCA in 2020, 2021, and then they've made a tremendous amount of investments into their facilities. And we came back and remeasured their buildings, and to see that FCI go from red to green, the excitement you get out of the fact that they've made these investments and it's made a noticeable difference on their FCI metric. I mean, that lights me up. That fires me up. I know that's a little nerdy, but it really is. It's really exciting to me.
Everything that we talked about, it's all really important. I just being I've been at KA for 10 years and we've been doing FCAs for a long time. I'm just more curious as you were talking. It got me thinking, like, what's the craziest thing you've seen in a facility?
I had that thought too.
I think it was.
And your wink if it's from Allina. Awesome. Just kidding. No, just kidding.
No, this was.
No,
I
yeah.
was. We were. Part two. Here we go. I was working a facility with Dustin Phillips, and it was an old asylum that Kraus-Anderson built actually like 100 years ago. And it's now shut down and everything. And there was like word that it was haunted and everything. And I was in the basement of this facility and I was leaning up against these boxes and he goes, "Tim, you might want to lean against those boxes." And I'm like, we looked at it and it was from the 1940s. It was coagulated blood from World War II. That was in boxes still in the storage there under this facility. It was just sitting there like it was for shipment to ready to be used and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's wild. So that was probably the wildest thing that I saw. And a funny story about that, we were walking through and it's like, you're thinking about these haunted buildings and stuff like that. And our customer, she's a lovely lady. She was on her phone, like kind of, texting or whatever. And we're walking through and all of a sudden we're walking through this really dark hallway and this generator kicks on. And I think I saw her skeleton jump out of her body and jump back in and she about lost her marbles. I was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? So that was all part of the same visit, but it was pretty wild. So
This is why we bring in a team of FCA professionals, so you don't have to go look by your haunted building.
that's right. Don't go to the haunted building.
You had a couple ghost hunters on your team.
I love that. Yeah.
That would have been a nice addition to the FCA services. Is your building content?
Yeah.
Goes. Yeah. FCA. We'll do a Halloween special. Yeah.
His biggest market sector is haunted houses.
What's that?
Exorcisms.
Yeah.
All right,
Very
cool.
cool.
Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that was great. I always love talking about this.
This is fun.
That wraps up this episode of Build Me Up. Be sure to check back in every month on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.